All right, if you have a retirement investment account and cannot buy Bitcoin for any reason, this video I'm going to walk through exactly what I would do and pretty much what I've done for family members and friends that have accounts where they can't hold Bitcoin in them. There's so many purposes for this around the world, whether you have a retirement, a 401k, a SIP in the UK or whatever, anywhere else in the world, this will work. Okay. And I'm going to walk through three different scenarios. And I think that the richer you are in dollar terms, the less Bitcoin as a percentage you probably can have in a portfolio, simply because you'll have illiquid assets like a home, like, properties, etc., etc. So there will be certain. Let me just close this. Hold on a second. People love calling me while I'm doing videos. So there will be certain limitations as to what you can do. However, this three scenarios will keep you pretty much protected. And we're going to go from stable, high volatility, and balls to the wall. Okay, these are the three portfolios that I'm going to cover in this video. And what I would personally do if I was starting over again in 2020 trying to figure this out, and I could not buy Bitcoin through the vehicles that I had. This is extremely important because this is what allows normal people who are not into it yet and terrified of it to get into it, which is why I think this video is extremely important and why I want you to subscribe. Because if you subscribe, and the faster you subscribe, the faster YouTube sends this out in front of people that really need to see it as well. So please do that. The one thing you can do for me is subscribe to the channel. Nothing else. I don't need anything else. I'm good for everything else. But right now, all you can do is subscribe to the channel, and please do that. It's extremely, extremely important if you're supporting the mission of helping people get to 1 Bitcoin. So, if you cannot buy Bitcoin, you cannot buy GBTC, here's what I would do. If I wanted a stable portfolio, who's a stable portfolio for? Also, none of this is financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor registered in your country that you're watching this. So this is the ramblings of a guy who figured some stuff out in life. Okay, that's how I want you to take it. But go see a financial advisor before you do any of this. Right? I always love those guys that have less money than me telling me exactly what to do with my money. I love those guys. So, a stable portfolio is for someone who is, I would say, 10 years from retirement, has built up some wealth, wants to, have some stability, doesn't want this volatility that's going on in the markets, etc., etc. This is who this is for. And in that scenario, I would advocate 60% cash and 40% MSTR stock. Right? The 60% cash is going to sound crazy to some people because you're going to say, oh my God, inflation, inflation, inflation. Sure. But to someone who's approaching retirement and needs stability, the cash is worth more than whatever inflation is going to come, whatever inflation is going to show up in the short term. And the 40% in MSTR stock, MicroStrategy, which has its treasury in Bitcoin, therefore the share price of the company will reflect the value of the Bitcoin holdings in addition to the business that they have, is going to far outweigh the inflation that's generated or that devalues that 60% in cash. I'm definitely not the person that's going to tell you need to go 100% into Bitcoin. I'm not that. I'm going to look at overall what's good for somebody to do and then go from there. So, 60% cash, 40% MSTR. I think that's a pretty good stable portfolio. That 40% will outgrow that 60%, amazingly well. And overall, I would basically rebalance that every 4 years, right? I would rebalance that every 4 years, and yeah, I think that works quite nicely overall. If you are approaching retirement, you need something safe, you need something stable, let's say you've got children, you've got family, you need to rely on an income coming from that portfolio. 60% cash, 40% MSTR, I think is going to do quite well. The next one is a high volatile portfolio. Okay, this is one where, let's say you're like mid 40s to 50s, you've got a great job, you've got income coming in, it's a stable job, and you want to figure out how to grow your wealth at an exponential rate. Well, then I would do, in a highly volatile situation, I would do 60% MSTR, 40% cash. Flip it around from the stable portfolio. 60% MSTR, 40% cash, and that's going to grow your wealth very nicely over the next 10 to 15 years. And of course, I'm going to talk in a second about what to do when an ETF comes out, because I think that's also important as well, because I think MSTR will be intriguing to see what happens to the share price of MSTR. And this is for someone who has some income, who wants to have some aggressive growth in their wealth, and doesn't really want to think about much else, but may need the cash in the short term for children's weddings, holidays, whatever it is, right? So that's why you have your 40% cash and 60% MSTR. And then there's the balls to the wall portfolio, right? This is for the people who are absolutely bullish as fuck on Bitcoin. And in that scenario, what I would do is I would have 90% MSTR. And again, balls to the wall should only make sense for someone if you have a very, very stable income coming in, you know how to generate cash flow when you need it. And the reason why that's important is because there might be drawdowns in the market that you need to sit through, like we've had for the last 2 years, where, if you put everything into Bitcoin, you're forced to sell. Even if you're a very, very big Bitcoin advocate, telling people that, there's no alternative to Bitcoin, you are forced to sell because you need to rebalance your portfolio. And that's a very, very important thing. So this is for people who know and have surety around the cash flow that they can generate. They have confidence around it. Maybe they have a business, et cetera, et cetera. This part is exactly what allowed me to execute the way that I did in 2020 and catch up to people that were much wealthier than me in terms of my Bitcoin holding, right? So the balls to the wall is 90% MSTR, right? Again, this is assuming you can't buy Bitcoin or GBTC. 90% MSTR, 10% cash, right? And I would spread that 10% cash into Bitcoin miners when Bitcoin is under the 200-week moving average, okay? That's balls to the wall. That is going to explode your wealth over the next, decade, assuming Bitcoin does exactly what we all think it's going to do. And that is what allowed me to grow my wealth in 2020, going balls to the wall. It was a little bit more, it was a little bit different spread than that because I could buy Bitcoin. But if you cannot buy Bitcoin, doing 90% MSTR, taking 10% in cash, and then buying miners when Bitcoin is under the 200-week moving average, you're gonna. It's like strapping a rocket to your back in preparation for the next cycle. And I would say any one of these portfolios has got a minimum hold of an 8-year window, which is why I said, if you are going balls to the wall or the high volatility one, you're gonna need cash flow coming in for that period, because the worst thing you want to do is dip into your holdings at the wrong time. The worst thing you want to do is be forced to rebalance at the wrong time. Now, all of this is dependent on your level of understanding. So while you are doing this, you also want to develop your understanding of what Bitcoin is, why it's valuable, why, the 3 rules of Bitcoin are the 3 rules of Bitcoin. You want to read the Bitcoin Standard. You want to read and listen to all these podcasts. You want to understand what Bitcoin is. You need to be able to understand why Bitcoin is better than gold. You need to be able to understand why Bitcoin is better than the stock market. You need to understand why Bitcoin is better than real estate. And only if you understand those things should you be going balls to the wall, right? Other than that, you've got the high volatility and the stable portfolio. By the way, this portfolio will also work for young people as well. Like if you've got young people in your life, children, et cetera, who've got retirement accounts, they're doing nothing with them, just buying a dose of MSTR in that retirement account will take care of them for the rest of their lives. So this is the way I would look at Bitcoin if I was coming into it right now and I could not have access to buying Bitcoin. This is exactly what I would do. I would pick one of these depending on what my life position was. Where I'm at, I would probably go balls to the wall again, just exactly as I did. And then structure my retirement account or whatever investment vehicle I've got where I can't buy Bitcoin through one of these methods. So it's very, very easy, yet it's very, very hard. I understand that. It's very, very easy for me to say it, but I want you to understand, I've actually been through this. I thought Bitcoin was a scam in 2017, right? I only came around to it in 2020 when I finally understood that I'd messed up. So, it is hard, it is tough, but you got one chance. Like, this is not where I'm sitting here in 10 years telling you, hey, listen, come to my talk because I'm going to teach you how to get into real estate, which you should have done 10 years ago. It's not going to be like that. I know for a fact that I'm going to have to go. I know for a fact that at some point, and who knows when that point is going to come, I know for a fact that at some point me making these videos is going to be irrelevant because it's over. This is a once-in-a-species opportunity that you have, which is why you have to jump on it right now. You cannot wait and try and think that you're going to learn things in the future and you're going to come back to it in the future and, once I sell this property, I'll take a look at it. No, this is right now. You have one shot, one chance, one opportunity to take advantage of this. If you don't do it, you will not be able to buy a whole Bitcoin. And again, my goal, regardless of where you're at in life, my goal is to get as many people to one Bitcoin as possible. Because at some point in the future, I think we should all do meetups as whole coiners. And of course, I don't know who's a whole coiner and who's not. There's no way to verify. All I will say is that you're a dickhead if you show up to a whole coiner meetup and you yourself know that you're not a whole coiner, right? It should be a self-assessment, not me holding you accountable for being a whole coiner or not. So I think that there should be these meetups. I think that this should happen, right? And people are going to say, oh, that's elitist and all that stuff. Oh, yeah, okay. All right. Just like anything else in life. Just like anything else in life. I proposed doing a meetup. I collect watches. And I proposed doing a meetup at the FP Journe Boutique in Miami after the conference that I went to. And everyone shot it down because it wasn't inclusive enough, right? Because you know what my requirement was? You better have a minimum of a Rolex on the wrist before you walk through the door. Otherwise, security won't allow you to come in. That was it, right? And everyone lost their shit. Why? Because it wasn't inclusive enough. Listen, the world works the way the world works. If you think that you're going to have 0.01 Bitcoin live in the West and have any influence or any power over anything that happens because you have a Bitcoin wallet with a few Satoshis in it, you're a moron. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. You're going to be as irrelevant then as you are now. Think about it. If you own 0.1 Bitcoin and Bitcoin is $3 million a coin, right? $3 million a coin. Your 0.1 Bitcoin is worth $300,000 in today's money. In today's money, you are broke, right? So, and again, I'm not saying this to be defamatory to anyone who is working hard to build up their holdings, to build up their wealth, but the point of me doing this is to get you to the point of influence. And the point of influence, I believe, is going to be one Bitcoin. It's going to be one Bitcoin. And you need to focus on getting there. And again, I'm talking about the Western countries. If you're in the East, if you're in third world countries, it's going to be different. I don't really know what those numbers are. But you need to get to one Bitcoin. And this is why, you know how many people I meet that say, I have an investment account, it's got $500,000 in it. I need to put Bitcoin, I'm waiting for an ETF. Why wait? You can do it right now. Just go 40% MSTR, 60% cash, sit on it, wait until the ETF comes out, and then do the conversion. So that was another point that I wanted to cover, which was the MSTR versus the ETF trade. The MSTR trade, I think, will lose a little bit of premium against the Bitcoin ETF because right now it's being viewed as a de facto ETF. The smart thing that I think Michael Saylor is doing, and we'll see how this emerges, is that it's coming around to looking like TQQQ looks for QQQ, which is a triple leveraged, QQQ ETF, a NASDAQ ETF, and an MSTR may end up being a leveraged Bitcoin ETF, right? That could absolutely be a thing. So, yeah, there's an option there. We'll see what happens, but I think overall you want to be in the underlying ETF to take care of the layers of risks that are associated with being involved in a single company once the ETF comes out. But again, MSTR will go on to be one of the most historically, successful companies in history. I think at this point it's going to be worth somewhere between $40 and $50 billion at the next peak, which is insanity, right? That's insanity. So Michael Saylor's done a great job, but I think it's going to be a one and done. But this is what I would do if I had to do it, right? And again, get to 1 Bitcoin. That should be your goal. Everything else is going to be irrelevant. Everyone else telling you to buy pieces of shit art to take part in the community is going to be irrelevant. All they're doing is taking your Bitcoin. That's all it is. They're just taking your Bitcoin. Your Bitcoin is going to be worth more to your progeny, even the progeny that you never meet. That's what this is about. You are doing this for the progeny that you never meet. This is like Patek Philippe. Patek Philippe has a great ad, which is you never really own a Patek Philippe. You just take care of it for the next generation, right? That's really what Bitcoin is about. It's like one of my favorite cognacs in the world, Remy Martin, Louis Trey. And again, I don't drink much of it because I don't drink alcohol generally. So every now and then I'll have a little bit. But the beautiful thing about that cognac is that in that cognac there is 100-year-old cognac in there. Now, of course, it's blended; it's not the whole bottle, but there is 100-year-old cognac, which means that somebody 100 years ago had to sit there and create this barrel of cognac, knowing that they would never taste it and their children will probably never taste it. But this is for someone much further down the line in the future. And that's love. That you don't have any reason to do that besides love. And so, if you miss this opportunity and you don't take advantage of it, you just got fun sitting around doing nothing, and you're like, I'll just wait for an ETF, you're missing the opportunity. You're missing what this is about. And you're missing the power grab that's happening right now as this asset continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So the choice that you're making today is for 2 generations down the line, and that's how I want you to think about it. But, if you've got that investment account and you're sitting there and you're going to decide not to do anything, what can I say? There's still only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy if you take action.